Um, Welcome to day 2 of Makeup Week Virtual. Exciting program we've put together from the Pro Beauty group, looking at what we can do for the makeup community across India and also overseas, because we've got many people logging in internationally as well to listen to the artists we've got on board. Super exciting today because we've got the Urban Chokra, Clint Fernandes, live with us in a few minutes, just waiting for him to log in. And we're going to really be talking about his journey. You know, what has he done over the decades he's been, now one of India's most celebrated makeup artists. And what took him from getting involved in the industry and becoming an artist to where he is today and how he's reinventing himself. Plus also some technical tips. So ensure you've got your questions lined up, and you start posting some comments which we can ask him. We're just bringing him into the conversation. Just waiting. Hope you enjoyed day 1. Hello.
Hi, Vikas.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
All
Sorry,
good.
1 second. I'm just trying to get the camera angle right so then there's not a lot of flare.
I think the flare is coming from you anyway.
Yeah. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, it's very clear actually.
Okay, great.
All right, you're managing to keep your hair and looks in shape during this lockdown. Mine is a mess.
Kind of. I mean, why not? I mean, we are part of the trade and it's part of the deal to look a little bit good also.
Yeah.
So a little bit of grooming really does make a lot of difference.
Yeah.
I haven't cut my hair in 2 months.
You haven't?
No.
Oh, you've done a good job.
It's very well used product.
Which product are you using?
TG Bedhead.
Yeah, great brand. Super.
Yeah.
Cool. So we are live today. So this is day 2 of Makeup Week Virtual, which is a week-long affair. And I think we're going 7 days, 3 shows a day, top Indian artists, as well as some international ones as well. And it's really, we're looking at, okay, we can't do anything physical, but how can we still keep reinventing something new to keep the community connected? And I'm really glad that you're joining us today to really look at a bit of technical advice and also talking about your journey as Clint. And you've got many fans, many followers. You've been around long enough. A lot of people that love the kind of work you've done over the years. First question, Urban Chokra, what is that about?
Well, that used to be my ID on Yahoo, like ages ago. And if you remember, there used to be this site called Orkut, which is like the predecessor of Facebook.
Yeah.
So it used to be my ID there too. And then I thought it was quite cool to use it along and like keep that, because just using my name, initially I just didn't want people to find me so much. So that's why I kept it as Urban Chokra, and it stuck along, and I think it's also quite catchy.
It is.
And it means city boy. Yeah. So why not?
So is that you? Are you like city boy, bad boy? How would you describe yourself?
Well, I would say I'm like more of a city boy in that sense, and completely a Bandra boy as such. I mean, I like the outdoors, I like nature, I like going into villages and mountaineering, but I'm a little bit of a sucker for my technical, comforts that you get into a city. I mean, like Wi-Fi and like everything around, the movies, or if I go out to a bar and all of those things, because I guess I like the city life to a certain extent, to a lot of extent actually.
All right, super. Well, it's still going to be a few more weeks, I think, before we can get out and about to nature and to bars
Yeah.
and cinemas and that.
Yeah, it's going to be quite some time. I think for bars and things like that to open, it's going to be a much longer wait.
Yeah,
I
I
think
know.
salons and all will open like very soon, but
I think in a couple of
for other
weeks,
places
Mumbai
to
should be
open.
opening.
Pardon me?
I think in a couple of weeks, the Mumbai salons as well should be opening up,
Yes,
hopefully.
yes. Yeah, should
Cool.
happen by June.
Yeah. So we wanted to really have this conversation about your journey. So I want to go back to, where did it all start? Like, how did you even get involved, in this as an
Well,
industry?
I've
And
been
when?
involved. I've, to be honest, like I've been involved right from when I was in college as such, because like one of my first, summer jobs was working with a production agency where I kind of, not a production company, like a film company that was doing ad films. So I was asked to do makeup on the job, which was like very simple makeup. Like all I had was a little bottle of foundation and some compact and powder. And it was the test launch for the soap powder called Ariel. If you remember, Ariel soap washing powders, it was a test launch, test ad for it before it launched into India. And it was for that. And then I used to work and assist in editing back in the office. So
Wow.
that was like my first summer job, which was kind of the starting. And when I used to do shows, like when I used to be a dancer during my college days, so then I used to kind of do all the makeup for myself and for whoever else help around, all of that. So that was a kind of a beginning that way. And then I think the interest picked up later on because I used to do clothes. And with makeup, in terms of like in comparison, with makeup, you're mostly self-reliant. You're not really relying on the skills of other people with makeup and hair. But
Yeah.
whereas when you're doing clothes and things like that, you're like relying on like several other people, for a master to cut properly, for tailors to stitch on time, for embroideries to happen on time. And I found that really frustrating because a lot of things are out of my hands as such. And being a little bit of a control freak that I am, I wanted this kind of control at work. And like
Yeah.
makeup for me is like playing. It's not like I'm doing anything really out of the ordinary or anything like that.
So when you
So
were doing
that
clothes, what do you mean when you were doing clothes? You were like, you were manufacturing, you were a designer. What?
I used to design and kind of supply clothes around. Also, I used to work with a store that used to
Yeah.
design for private clients, all of that. Handling menswear, I used to do textiles, a little bit of it.
Yeah.
A lot of hand painting, because there was a rage of hand painting at one point of time on garments. So I
Yeah.
used to do a lot of that myself. And I think like having an artistic background is kind of helpful.
Yeah.
So that's how I kind of made the shift also very easily, because it's not, for me, like makeup is not like a difficult thing as such. It's just painting on a 3D surface.
Hmm. How did you do that shift? Because obviously you were more in the clothes industry and textiles. So how do you make this shift one day to
Well, I
deciding to
think
go?
like whatever you decide to do, I think it should be 120% or 1,000% effort. So when I decided to get into makeup and hair, I said I will stop doing clothes completely and get into this. And then that is how I got into it. And a few of my friends from the industry who I knew from before really helped me, like Cory, Kapil Bhala, Anil Chinappa. They kind of helped me to, the late Subhash Vagal to help me to assist them and learn on the job. And I think, as I told you earlier, like I did my first cover within 3 months of working as an assistant. So that's pretty gratifying.
Do you remember which cover it was? Do you
Health
remember
and
which?
nutrition.
Yeah. How did you
A
get that?
magazine
So if
called
you
Health
work,
and Nutrition.
yeah, you're shadowing Corey, etc. at the time. How did you get to do your own cover so quickly?
Well, one of the people I was assisting for Kapil, uh, I think he was busy on another job. So he asked if I could be, he asked the magazine if they could replace him with me. and he sent me on that job. So it was kind of lucky. So that was a good thing.
Wow. Okay. And then, so what was that at the beginning? You were shadowing, people like Corey, etc., for a while, or because it's very different as a makeup artist. That we were chatting earlier. Like if you're deciding you want to become a hairstylist, for example, you do your training and you generally end up in a salon, and then you know what your career path is as a stylist. Right? You
Yes.
start at the bottom, then you do a few months, a year, you get upgraded to junior stylist, senior stylist, creative head, etc. But how does it work how does it work for you, back when you were starting? Because it's not easy.
No, it isn't easy, to be honest. Like, I mean, when I was working, I was actually kind of lucky also because I kind of got, I mean, there were not a lot of makeup artists at that point of time, very few people. So, like, as I said, within 3 months, I did my first cover, and then I assisted for another 3 months. And then I started doing jobs on my own. And the progression of makeup, I mean, I would say of makeup artists would be like you get into photo shoots, then you do ad films, then you do films, weddings, all of that. And I would say your progress is determined by your bankroll and the kind of billing that you are doing. So that is how it would be. Whereas in like a salon, it's more like a corporate setup, so you know where you're climbing up the ladder. But
Yeah.
whereas in makeup, I would say it's totally determined on the kind of billing that you're doing. So even if you're just doing weddings and not doing anything else, and your billing is still there, then you've reached a certain point.
Right.
So I wouldn't really say that, it's bad to only do this or it's bad to only do that. But it's all determined, like, if you're making good money in a certain sector, that's great for the person. So that shouldn't really put you in a corner and think that, oh, I'm lesser than somebody else, because you're not. You're earning as much as somebody else
Yeah.
in that sense.
Is that the main kind of way you look at how well you're doing as an artist? Like, is it the commercials,
Well,
or are there other ways of being recognized in this industry?
Well, I would say, see, personally, I think the kind of remuneration that you receive is very important because we are all working for money on one side. But
Mm.
then on the other side, there is job satisfaction and there is the creative pursuit, because a lot of us as artists, as such, I mean, that's why we call makeup artists,
Yeah.
are creatively pursuing something which is artistic. And if you're getting to do some things like that, like even like, I mean, till today, I work with certain photographers on certain jobs for little or no money just because it is artistically fulfilling, and I think that kind of makes your day. Like you can do very boring jobs the whole month, and just that one day of something really creative or artistic can just boost your confidence and make you feel really good about yourself. So I
Yeah.
think that's important, I mean, at least for me, it's important. But it's totally dependent on how people also see their own careers in what perspective. Because if
Yeah.
you're pursuing something which is more artistic, you will find avenues. It's like the law of attraction. You will definitely attract what you want to do, coming
Yeah.
towards you.
And as an artist, like, what are these different paths that you can take? So you said, like, one is to look at the artistic freedom and artistic direction you want to take as an artist. Some might be commercial.
Yeah.
So what are these different? Because really, this is also great support for budding artists who are listening to us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like, see, to be in a way, I mean, if you're getting into fashion is
Yeah.
not very well paid. I mean, we know this. This is like a universal fact. Neither are fashion shows, because fashion shows are again controlled by a lot of corporates who are doing kind of free work for shows and designers. So, but if you're doing fashion shows, it does tend to be a little bit more artistic. If you're doing fashion shoots, it is a little bit more artistic that way. But if you're doing things like television, if you're doing things like cinema, if you're doing things like that, or even bridals, then it goes into a more commercial kind of zone.
Yeah,
So I mean, these are the few avenues. Like I would say, like my track has been mostly fashion and advertising at the same time. Giving
yeah,
equal importance to both. Otherwise, there are for some people, like getting into television and getting into cinema is like a straight on track, or getting
yeah.
straight away into cinema and doing only like movies and things like that is a straight on track for some people. Like when I
But that's
started,
never
I
been.
started. Pardon?
But that's not been something that you were chasing. That you want to get into Bollywood and TV and screen. That
Not
wasn't something that
really.
was.
Like no, like when I started with like MTV and Channel V,
Yeah,
which is like these youth-based channels and programs and things like that. So I was doing makeup for VJs and various celebs who came on to the channel. So in that sense, it was like really good experience because I was getting to do slightly more glamour makeup for people like that.
mm,
Not really boring things as such. So
yeah.
and I was getting to a lot of it. Like I was doing like 5 to 6 faces a day. So that's a
Wow.
lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah, because then you're doing like 5, 6 episodes in a day, so then there is a lot of work that gets done. So that was a good thing. And then from there, I went into advertising. But there are
Okay.
other ways also. Like, I mean, you can start with like doing photo shoots and all of that. And then luckily you end up working with like a movie star. And then you start doing her films and all of those things. So that's
What's
another
the
track to
difference
go into.
from a technical point of view? What's the difference? When you're working, in advertising or on shoot, or on programs like MTV. From an makeup artist point of view, what's the various technical differences that you have to bring to the
Like
table?
with MTV, you have to be a little bit current in terms of trends. So, like whatever the VJs have on, firstly, in terms of clothing, in terms of makeup and hair, has to be a little bit in trend. It has to be youth centric as such, because the kids need to identify with whoever's on screen.
Yeah.
Whereas in advertising, it becomes very precise because they're looking at each and every detail with a microscope. So the skin has to be super perfect, the hair has to be super perfect. Like if you see hair flying, it's always flying in the most beautiful and perfect way because they're selling a product,
Yeah.
so everything is very precise in that. Like even the makeup also has to be very precise that it doesn't overpower something else, or it's just there for what it is required to be there, so it's very like acute, and
And
it's
how
very
do you?
director kind of
Yeah.
driven.
And then, especially like in your younger days when you were starting and you went from doing a cover, from working with Corey, for example, then doing a cover, then working on TV channels. How do you pick up, how to keep adapting? Like, do you go back to do training, or it's all on the job kind of learning?
For me, to be honest, I mean, it was mostly on the job. Like in between, when I was doing television, also I was doing a lot of ads for children. So working with small kids, basically, because they don't really give, like I mean, if you're a makeup artist who's just starting off, they'll never give you like a big ad to do. They'll give you kids to do, or men to do, that kind of thing. So you kind of adapt to it, and the director is always extremely helpful in what kind of makeup and hair they want.
Okay.
So they're very vocal about it. They don't just give you a free rein. Otherwise, I mean, you'll see some crazy makeup in ads. So they are very precise. Like, okay, this is what we want. This is how we want the person to look like,
Yeah.
and there are references given. All of that. So those guidelines are there, and then you have to just bank on your skills to be able to deliver that.
Yeah.
So
And
that's how
then,
it is.
moving through these, so what would you say are kind of tips you can give to people, like those trying to get into doing a cover, for example? What tips would you give to artists listening about this is how you create the perfect look for a cover, for example?
See, as a team member, firstly, it's very important to remember like what the stylist wants to do, because there is always a stylist on the job, and what the photographer wants to be done. So those notes need to be taken into consideration. And then when you're dealing, like suppose you're dealing with a celeb, like can be a big celeb or a mini celeb. So even their kind of needs are taken into consideration. Like the celeb might say that, oh, you know, if you pull my hair too flat, I'll kind of look bald, whatever, whatever. So you happen to be a little bit of a mediator between, you know, the person you're working with and the photographer and the stylist. That is there on one hand. But then in terms of treatment, I would say skincare is ultimately a very important feature. Whether it is a cover or whether it is like working with kids on an ad or whatever that you're doing, like even a bride, skincare is super, super important, because if you moisturize the skin, which is number one, and you use like a really good moisturizer, you're never going to have the makeup crack. It's going to look fresh, you know. So then using that, then after that, like earlier we used to get pore refiners that kind of smoothen out all of the skin basically and give you like this porcelain skin. And now we get primers. So investing in a good primer is another thing that creates flawless skin. So sometimes, I mean, I feel when you're having what you say, when you've got good moisturizer, a good primer, your base that is required is much, much less. You don't really need to use so much of base. You don't really need to use so much of foundation, you know, because already the skin is so much more perfected, and then you've just got to just cover like the dark spots or whatever else that you need to cover. So, I mean, that is one of the main things. So these are the two things I kind of swear by for, you know, a cover shoot or kind of perfect makeup as such. And another thing would be, I would say, is good brushes and a good setting spray. Like I use the setting spray 3 times. Once after base, once after I do the bronzing, blush, contour, and then once again after I finish everything, I use it. So it kind of really sets everything into place and gives you this kind of flawless look.
And you would do that kind of across whatever look you're trying to create. So whether that's for screen or cover or bridal,
absolutely,
that's the tips that you would give everyone.
Absolutely. Like these are the things, basics which are required across the board. The amount of foundation, the amount of concealer you need to use, that depends on the job at hand. You know, so that is totally dependent on the job at hand. It's dependent on the face one is working on. So if the person has lots of scars, lots of pigmentation, you need to use a little bit more concealer and foundation. If the person has lesser scars, all of that, or pigmentation, you need to use lesser. If the person has flawless skin, you probably just need to use a compact. You don't really need to use much more. And then depending on the job, for example, I'd spoken to somebody earlier too. I was working on a particular job where there was a lot of lighting. We were shooting film, and the lighting was so strong where the skin was getting faded out. It was looking kind of, you know, shallow as such. So we had to perk up the makeup to the extent that when you saw her in the normal light, in like normalcy, it almost looked clownish. Like the blush was really heavy, the eyes were really heavy, the lips were kind of dark. But when you saw her on camera, because of the amount of light, it all faded out and looked kind of natural. So it's very dependent on that. And these tweaks actually happen sometimes on the spot, on the job.
So you've got to be very on top of your game working as an artist. Because like you said, these conditions can change, and suddenly what you came in your mind of, this is how you're going to do the look, you get thrown out by the lighting's different, and you've got to kind of respond accordingly.
Absolutely. Like sometimes even, for example, if you're working in full sunlight, you know, on a beach, for example, now one has to take into consideration light. There is light from the top, as well as because of the sand, and sand contains glass, which makes it very reflective. So from below, the face is going to be lit also, and that too tends to wash out makeup.
So what's your tip there? So like, if you're doing a beach shoot, for example, you're doing a you know, a beach one, what are the kind of what are the kind of areas, you know, that can go wrong for a makeup artist if you're not prepared? And what advice would you give, to artists,
But
dealing with?
yeah, like especially on a beach shoot, which is normally in swimwear for most people,
Yeah.
I would say elbows and knees, because like a lot of people tend to forget to put makeup on elbows and knees, and you find girls with really dark knees and really dark elbows, and that can look really gross on camera. So elbows and knees is something one needs to keep that in mind.
Wow.
And next is to kind of keep in mind the light which is being used, also the outfit which is being used, because again it'll be a slightly beachy outfit, all of that. So you can't
Yeah.
go very heavy with makeup. If you're probably shooting like completely like a ball gown or something like that, or like evening wear, then you can go a little bit more glamorous with makeup.
Yeah.
So it's
And,
totally dependent on the clothes, and then
and
again depending on lighting.
And do you do this research in advance? Like, are you mentally prepared going, right, we're going to do a beach shot, so this is what I've got to prepare to get that perfect look on the beach, but I'm doing an evening kind of shoot? Or is it kind of slightly spontaneous when you're on
Well,
set?
not really, to be like there is a lot of communication that happens with the stylist and the makeup artist prior to the shoot, or with the photographer and the makeup artist prior to the shoot. So they kind of already have what do you say, informed the makeup artist that this is what we are shooting and this is the kind of look that is required.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, I mean, everybody works with some amount of referencing these days, whether it
Mm.
is in India, whether it is internationally,
Yeah.
there is an X amount of referencing that happens.
Yeah.
So there is that kind of awareness what needs to be done. The tweaks will happen like at the spur of the moment. Like if, as I was saying, if the face looks a little too washed out, then you increase the blush, then you increase this or you increase that. So those tweaks happen at the spur of the moment, but otherwise everything is prior. I mean, it's already decided kind of prior to the shoot that this is
Yeah.
what we want to go and this is the kind of direction that we want to go into.
All right. And in terms of when you're doing these looks, especially like when you're switching between, say, beach to bridal, etc., are there certain kind of brands that you have to use? Which brands or product would you recommend? To help you create that perfect look.
Well, not necessarily brands. I would say more in terms of the kind of product. Like for something on the beach, I would tend to use lesser foundation, lesser concealer, simply because you have a lot of humidity around.
Okay.
And if you're going to really cake up the face too much, it starts going to look a little bit pasty after some time. You have a little bit of like a lot of moisture. If it's like a beach with a lot of waves and high waves, there's going to be definitely a lot of moisture in the air. So you need to be aware of those things. Using something waterproof kind of works universally, like waterproof mascara, all of
Yeah.
that, like especially for jobs as such. Like, I don't recommend it for personal use. I mean, because it can be a little bit of a bitch to take off waterproof mascara. But
Yeah.
the waterproof mascara works really well for brides too, because it keeps everything in place all evening long. Even if you're doing something on the beach which involves water, getting into the water, all of that, then waterproof makeup works really well. Using something which is kind of oil based will kind of detract the water and the makeup will stay in place. Using
Okay.
a little bit of a stronger concealer will also cover like pigmentations, elbows and knees, all of those kind of things.
Hmm.
So it depends on those kind of things to be used. What is again very good to use universally also is compact,
Okay. And
because
any in
it's the
particular,
instant
like
freshener.
anyone in particular that you kind of swear by?
Shiseido.
Shiseido. Okay.
I love Shiseido. I mean, the Shiseido compact is brilliant. And it gives you this, what do you say, almost photoshopped finish. So, which
Wow.
is really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we were chatting about that earlier, saying right now it's difficult to get hold of products, and you're saying you've got into kind of making stuff at home at the moment. So, any tips you want to give there to artists? Like, because what you said, we might struggle to get hold of good products right now?
Yeah, so I mean, I would say, see, in terms of makeup, it's going to be difficult to make makeup at home.
Hmm.
So that's going to be a little bit of a tricky thing. But in terms of skincare, I've kind of like got a few things which I've done. For example, mixing vitamin E
Yeah.
with, like, even it can be a cheap skin cream. It works really well. Hi, Banal. uh, Using vitamin E even with aloe vera gel and applying it to the face.
Okay.
It works brilliantly. I mean, it kind of gives you a glow, gives you a lot of what you say. It takes away all the pigmentation also. Like, I mean, it's worked really well on me because I don't want to waste my skincare, and I've kept everything in the fridge until later. And I've been using like a small mix of Botanica's eye cream with a whole strip of vitamin E squeezed into that. So, and
Yeah.
it works really well. Like, I've been seeing results which are like even as good as Lancome's Genifique. So that's really brilliant.
Super. I am going to get that tip off you later. So you are going to send me that because I have very dark eyes. So I want to say hi to Asha, Armand, who are watching as well. And you're getting a lot of love on the comments. We've got one comment from Bhavna saying, is it necessary to use high-end products for flawless makeup?
Not really, because you can get very good result from supermarket brands too. I mean, there are like cheaper products. I mean, you have like things like NYX, you have L'Oreal, you have Maybelline. All of these can give you really good results. It depends how you use it. And if your skincare is good, coming back to that point, if your
Yeah.
skincare is good, uh, any kind of makeup kind of works, so it you don't really need to use constantly only high-end products. For example, Pat McGrath's foundation is like $125 a bottle,
Okay.
or $140. It gives
Yeah.
you a beautiful result, but the coverage is not that much.
Right.
And I feel it's meant for girls who've got like flawless skin already.
Hmm.
So, I mean, you weigh the pros and cons in that sense. And if you use a good highlighter, if you use a good blush, then your foundation can be kind of, compensated with that. And even blushes. There are sometimes that I kind of use a blush from this brand called, what's it called? It's a local brand made in Bombay.
Bombay.
Yeah.
Pack?
Stars. No,
Stars. Yeah.
Stars. Yeah, from Stars. And
Oh,
they've
wow.
got some colors which are really good. So, and
Okay.
in fact, they were the first ones to come out with highlighting pigments, which I'd not found anywhere else in the world. So, and I used to buy like around 100 grams of that in bulk and use it as highlighter.
Wow. Super.
So, I mean, you don't really need something which is like super expensive.
Okay, good. And then before we go back to a bit more technical, I want to go back to your journey. What was a moment in your career that you suddenly kind of realized that you've arrived as a makeup artist? Because there would have been a lot of time you're working, you're getting good, exciting jobs. Was there a moment when you suddenly realized, okay, I've kind of made it now as a makeup artist?
I think I still haven't reached that point, and I don't like to
What?
think that I've reached that point, because I feel the moment you kind of you reach that point in your career, it's the end, because then you become too complacent. It's
Hmm.
the end of everything. So I think the only way to do it is to work hard, always keep learning. I mean, the moment you say that, oh, I've arrived, that's
Yeah.
really the end of everything. And
Great tip.
also that's a little bit, I mean, you're just saying it for your own ego. And I think
Hmm.
that's completely wrong, because like there must be somebody else who's probably not making as much as you are commercially or whatever, but is still much better than you. So we can only better ourselves
Hmm.
constantly.
Good. And then how do you do that? So how do you keep kind of keep upskilling, keep learning, keep yourself fresh? You know, what do you do to kind of keep
I
yourself
like
inspired?
my travels around the world have kind of helped with that. Like, you know, doing fashion weeks in Paris, doing fashion weeks in New York have kind of helped with keeping abreast with what's happening, communicating with artists from around the world to know, you know, what exactly one should do. Oh, hi, Ivan. There's a friend of mine from New York, from Bumble and Bumble, who's on here.
Wow.
A perfect example of being, you know, in touch with people from around the world as such to kind of
Yeah.
know exactly what is happening. So, you know, I mean, that kind of keeps you in touch. Being aware, you know, social, like on social media. I mean,
Mm.
you have a lot of information online in terms of the internet and everything.
Yeah.
So just to read up a lot as to what is being launched, technologically, what is being done. Like I've managed to find lip plumpers that give you the same effect as invasive injections. So, I mean, you can do that without really, you know, destroying the body as such.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we've
So,
got
I mean, it's
uh,
just, pardon?
just yeah, on your point about there's so much information online. We've got a question from Nupur Gupta who says, "What's your take on YouTube makeup videos?" And there's lots.
Well,
I mean, there'll be millions out there.
uh, see, to a certain extent, I think it's kind of informative because you're getting to see a different perspective of makeup. You're getting to see somebody else's way of working. So it's great. I mean, a lot of makeup schools ban people, their students, from watching makeup videos. You know,
Yeah.
like, I mean, I've heard of certain schools saying that you're not allowed to watch YouTube videos for makeup because you've got to do it yourself. But why not? I mean, if it kind of increases your base knowledge, there's a lot
Mm.
one can learn from those things. But the fact is, one needs to practice, you know.
Yeah.
That is the most important, is like whatever you see on screen, it needs to translate down into some kind of practical form.
Yeah.
So if you're watching makeup videos on YouTube or wherever, you need to either practice it on yourself or on somebody else. I mean, these things need to be practiced. These people
Okay.
saying, "Hi, Hasna." Oh, thanks, Ivan.
And you've got another question by Bhavna. Any tips for bridal makeup? Does the makeup change according to the lighting on the stage?
Well, I would say, see, with bridal makeup, it's a little bit tricky because the lighting on the stage, yes, it will be strong, but it will not be so strong that it kind of, what you say, desaturates the makeup. So if you're going to do a bride, like, you know, with very dark eyes, very strong blush, very strong lips, she's obviously going to look very funny because there are people also guests meeting her face to face, and she
Mm.
shouldn't look ridiculous. So whatever needs to be done should be done within the beautiful aesthetic. That's important. You know, you need to keep that in mind, that the girl looks beautiful. And very often, a lot of brides have a photographer or a videographer that comes into the dressing space there, where they do a little bit of a shot while she's getting like the veil put or the flowers put in the hair or the jewelry being worn. So you can see how the makeup is looking, and if it is looking a little bit shallow, if it's looking a little bit dull, you can perk certain things up there and there itself and correct it. But don't start off with too much that it looks ridiculous, you know.
Yeah.
One needs to be a little bit sensitive towards these things, because you're not going to get a bride sorry, who looks like a supermodel all the time. You're going to get very simple girls who want to look pretty.
Yeah. And you're right. And the thing is getting that balance between what do they look on stage face to face, plus for photography as well. Because sometimes the makeup is done more from a
Absolutely.
photography, videographer point of view, but in person it looks over the top.
Yeah, I mean, you have to see both the things and you have to strike that balance. So
Yeah.
I think as far as makeup artists are concerned, you have to have some kind of knowledge, you know, about all these things. It's a little bit important. And that happens either on the educative part of it, where while you're doing your training, you understand all of these things, or it happens on the job, that you have to be smart enough to pick these things up and kind of, you know, work around these limitations as such.
Yeah. How do you deal with kind of like fussy brides? Like, you know that this is a look that would look great on the bride, but they're like, no, I saw, I don't know, Katrina looking like this, or blah, blah, looking like this, and this is what everyone's doing right now. How do you strike that balance as an artist, trying to tell them this is
Well,
not going to look good?
you don't spend more than 10 minutes trying to convince her. If she's not convinced within 10 minutes, you do exactly what she wants, because that is her day.
Yeah.
That is her special day that she wants to be looking in a particular way, and
Yeah.
she's paying you shitloads of money to do it. So it's really client servicing, and that's what you do. You know, you kind of please her, and if she wants it in a certain way, you do it for her in that way. And I think that's just fair to the bride also, because she needs to be happy. If she feels happy with two, like, you know, red uh, globs on her cheeks and, like, you know, super dark eyeliner, and that's what makes her happy, do it.
Yeah.
You know,
I
but it
think that's
doesn't really go that far. They
yeah.
just want a particular kind of look, and you kind of
I think
translate it down and do it.
yeah, I think that's also good advice for husbands. Don't spend more than 10 minutes trying to convince them. Just give a just agree and move on.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I think needs to be done, because your client is, to be honest, always right. I mean, the customer is always right. This is an old saying that has been a part of any kind of sales and service slogan. You know, so if they want a certain thing, you give it to them. If you're
Yeah.
not able to do it, then don't do the job. It's as simple as that, you know.
Yeah, and that's
And
great
there'll be
because
other makeup artists waiting to grab that same job and do it for them.
yeah, and that's great because we were in conversation with Mark Hayes from Vidal Sassoon a couple of weeks ago. He's their
Yeah,
global creative director, and he said the same thing. Like, when you're doing the consultation, which is 5-10 minutes max, if you feel that what the client wants, you can't deliver, or you're not on the same page, he said it's better to walk away from doing that job. Otherwise, you'll end up in an argument at the end
absolutely.
of it. So, good tip.
Absolutely. You know, I think anybody who is a little bit matured in their profession will, I mean, it's only immaturity that gets stubborn and aggressive and all of that. So if you are a little bit matured, and I think this also comes with experience, because every new makeup artist, every new stylist, they just want to have their way and no other way. And
Yeah.
it doesn't really happen all the time, you know, because they might use you for that one job and then not use you again. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. We've got
Or have
one.
you replaced that very same day?
Yeah, we've got another question from Gunpreet, which is, any skincare tips you can give which are not too expensive?
Skincare tips, I would say, like, for example, hydrate yourself. That is not expensive. Drinking a lot of water, getting enough of sleep, having enough of greens as such. Lots of, like, you know, leafy vegetables, having a really balanced diet. All of these things really help, because what your internal is what shows externally. Another thing, I would say, coconut oil. Sorry, organic coconut oil works really, really well on skin. So
And you
organic
apply
coconut oil,
like a
you
daily
apply
application?
like a daily application. A lot of Indian grandmothers will swear by it. You know, and some of them are like 80, 90 without a wrinkle or a line. So it's just that, like, you know, that organic coconut oil really works really well. Again, mixing vitamin E capsules are not expensive. It's like around 50, 100 rupees a pack of 10. So you can mix that into the organic coconut oil and just apply a little bit in the daytime and in the night. Using a sunscreen is important. You know, that really works well. So using a sunscreen, and especially in cities that have got a lot of pollution, like Delhi, for example, has got super amount of pollution. So using a sunscreen helps for the day as well as for the night. So you use your moisturizer and then you use your sunscreen, because then the sunscreen kind of really protects your skin. So, I mean, these are the couple of things that I think would help, like especially girls who are traveling by trains, buses, all of that. You know, you need to protect your skin. Covering it with a scarf just won't help sometimes, because pollution gets through all of that also.
Got it. And then there's another question on how to get rid of dark circles and pigmentation.
Dark circles and pigmentation, I mean, one easy thing is to use is kind of bleaching agents, because you get certain products, I think from Estee Lauder, from Neutrogena, you get products that are called spot removers. So that kind of help. Dark circles, to a certain extent, is hereditary. To a certain extent, is a lack of iron in the system. So you need to do a blood test firstly to check if you've got low iron levels and hemoglobin levels, because if that is the case, then you need to up that, and then the dark circles automatically disappear over time. So speaking to a dermat also would help, because as a makeup artist, I don't want to give you medical advice as such, because I'm not authorized to do so. So I can give you like advice to, like, you know, what you can conceal it with. Like, you get various products that you can conceal dark circles with. Sometimes for some people, using color correctors also work. So all of those things can be done topically. But otherwise, if it is very severe and things like that, speak to a dermat, because that would help.
Super. And then another question, which local foundation is good for dry and pigmented skin?
With local foundations, I think, you have Lotus, which I've tried, which is not so bad. You have Lakme, which is also not, I mean, which is quite pretty good. Stars too, I think, has a concealer. Pack also has some concealers. I've never tried either of those two. Stars, in fact, has something which also covers tattoos. So they've got something which is slightly heavier. So these you can find locally. Otherwise, from like the international brand space, which is available locally, L'Oreal works really well. I tend to use those on shows sometimes. True Match. Even the Maybelline Fit Me foundation also is pretty good.
Okay. Cool. We have this is more couple of career kind of questions. One is from Sarah. Should we keep doing free collaboration shoots because no one pays? So what's your advice around that?
It depends on what part of your career you are at. Totally on that. And what are you getting out of this free collabs? If you're getting a really interesting book, if you're going to be getting jobs with people that you're collaborating with, commercial jobs at some point of time, then it's a good thing to do, you know. Then you can just do it for like a year also, it's all right. Because then you'll get a really nice book that happens, all of that. But then if you're getting people who are just taking you for a ride and taking advantage of you, I mean, that is totally up to your discretion, and you need to realize that also. So that needs to happen.
Yeah. And then moving, similar question, but how does a makeup artist start assisting established artists? And how do you know, like when you started assisting Corey when you were young, how do you go about as a fresher figuring that approach out?
You have to contact people personally. There's no other way. Like, you've got to try and reach out to people on Instagram. You need to try and reach out to people via their email addresses or through common contacts as such. And I'll be honest, like for me, I don't really take on assistants who are going to come in for 2 months or 3 months. If somebody's going to come in, I want them to be there with me for at least 2 years. It's no point investing my time with somebody who's just going to spoon off my knowledge and go away. So as an established artist also, it doesn't make sense for me, you know, to just, you know, try and teach somebody to do something properly, and by the time they learn it, they're not there anymore. So you have to be prepared to work that long.
Yeah. So for example, if someone wanted to assist you, what approach should they adopt? You know, what would you tell them?
I'll reach out on Instagram, but in terms of me, myself, my assistant has been working with me for what, 12 years now.
Okay.
So I don't really take on assistants. I take on assistants who are going to pay me for a year, because then I kind of teach them around that time also. So because I mean, this is after burning my fingers many times. It's what I realized, that it's no point just like, you know, keeping on people like that unless they are really dedicated and focused. There is one of the girls who was assisting me who I met at a class earlier, a girl called Richa. I don't know if you've met commonly with her. So she's been working with me off and on jobs, and who's been so focused and dedicated to the job that it's a pleasure to have somebody like her. You know, but these kind of people are very few and far between. And so now what I take is just basically people who I say that I'm going to charge them X amount. They can assist me on jobs for like a year, not a year, like 6 months. And I give them a certain amount of training in between. So then they learn also, plus they get practical knowledge and everything else. So I think that's only fair.
And what kind of attitude you need to see from them? You know, so established artists, because you've been there, you've spent decades, you know, getting to the top in your career. What kind of attitude do you need to see? What would you advise juniors? And look, this is what we need to see for you to come and progress.
Well, it's something similar that, I mean, I've heard people say about children. Children should be seen, not heard. So would the assistants. You know, so that sense of humility should be there, that they're seen, they do the job, that's it, and not be heard at all. If they get too vocal, they're out.
Right.
So that's the thing. And just hard work. You know? I mean, you should be really passionate about the job that you're doing. And that's how it is, you know. I mean, there has to be that kind of passion.
Yeah. Back to a technical one. We've got Bhavna again asking, can you please tell us more about men's makeup? Is concealing it enough, or is foundation also needed?
Again, with men's makeup, it's a little bit dependent. I would say sometimes you can do the concealing just with foundation. You don't really need to use a concealer because that will make it too thick and too heavy. So if it works just to do concealing with makeup, like with a foundation, then you might need to use a little bit of concealer in certain places. And powdering is necessary to keep the skin kind of matte, because you don't want to see men with highlighters and things like that. So, and it's also important to keep it, natural as possible. You know, not too much. Like at the most, do the eyebrows, use a clear mascara to clear any kind of powder from the eyelashes, but not really a colored mascara, like a black or anything like that, you know. And it is, in some men, you need to do some kind of contouring. So basically to give them a kind of a chiseled face, especially for bridegrooms or like a men's fashion shoot. So that needs to be kept in mind, but that also is very subjective to what the job is.
Right. Okay. We've got Anil asking, how do you make a client look like a celebrity? So what are your tips there?
Well, that's difficult because you can make them look like anything. Like you can make them look perfectly like Katrina Kaif, but if they don't have the attitude, it doesn't work. You know, so I mean, you can copy an entire look down to the T, but the attitude needs to come from within, that they actually feel like a celebrity. So it's not only with makeup, it's makeup, hair, clothes all together that kind of make the person look very celebrated as such. But it's all with the attitude, because sometimes if you notice that a Katrina Kaif or a Jacqueline Fernandes has got really nothing on, but they still look very celebrity-like. And that comes with the attitude. Like a Malaika Arora walking into a gym with zero makeup on, just a ponytail, looks like $1 million.
Okay. So it's more about the, you know, how they carry themselves, the confidence your client has that could make them appear to be more of a celebrity. I think there's an interesting question here. We were chatting about it earlier. Because, you know, as a makeup artist, you're very makeup focused. But how important is the hair to the whole look?
Super important. I think it's like 50%, 50%, because that is what creates the entire look. Because, for example, if you're doing nude makeup and you're doing messy hair, that is one look. But if you're doing nude makeup and then you're doing like a full graphic hairdo, that's another look altogether. You know, so it's as important of what you're trying to say and what you're trying to convey in terms of a look.
And then is it something that you get involved with the hairstyle, the hair bit at all, or you give that separately to a hairstylist to kind of complete the look?
Mostly I do both on a job that way. But if there is a hairstylist that has been pre-booked or whatever, so then we kind of collaborate as to what needs to be done. Yeah. So depending on what the job is, like for example, I was with the hair, so then accordingly that's how I treated the makeup. So it's very important to have that communication. You can't be isolated and working.
And any tips you would then, from an education point of view, because most makeup artists are very kind of, like I said, not many can do both, like makeup and hair. So any tips you would give artists to learn how to also be able to do hair as well to complete the look?
I would say start doing a training course. Sorry, you need to excuse me for a minute. I need to get some water.
Sure. Hi, Nena. How are you? It's great to see. We actually have people from all around the world signing in to you know, say hi to Clint. Hi, Vipul.
Back. Yeah. So as I was saying,
yeah,
it's important to also have a course.
You were talking
to do a kind of a.
Any you would recommend?
I'm not really aware of so many hair courses in Bombay. I feel the ones that come out of salons are mostly technical courses in terms of coloring and things like that. You know?
Yeah.
So there are some styling courses that people do, but I would say like ask around and kind of see the course syllabus as to what is being taught. Because it's important, like, I mean, like basic hair is important for every hairstylist to do, like a blow dry, good curling, tonguing, all of that. So, and also with hair is you need a lot more practice than with makeup.
Yeah. And we actually,
like
this
makeup
week,
can be relatively easier, but with hair, you definitely need to practice because hair is far more technical as compared to makeup is.
Yeah, and later this week we actually have Seema Jerajani doing updos.
Okay.
Seema's going to be showing and making it easy for makeup artists. So she's going to do a whole session on updos and how makeup artists can learn that to complete the look. A technical question: how do you reduce the T-zone oiliness if it's causing acne? Any advice there?
One way is to use blotting paper.
Okay.
You get this tea tree blotting paper that kind of works really well. One second. Yeah. So tea tree blotting paper works really well. Another way to use it is to use again a compact, an oil absorbing compact on the T-zone. So you use a blotting paper which absorbs excess oil, and then you use a compact to keep it matte. And then that prevents the oiliness from resurfacing much more later.
Can you suggest?
Hi.
And sorry, we got kicked off because 1 hour's up.
Oh, okay. I was wondering what happened.
Yeah. I can't remember what we were talking about. I think we're talking about oily skin, the T-zone. We're talking about T-zone, and you're giving advice around how to deal with oily skin and the T-zone.
So one thing I said was to use those blotting papers with tea tree oil. Those work
Yeah,
really well. And they're very purse handy. It can just go into the purse or the wallet. And another thing would be to use a compact. So that kind of
okay,
sorts it out.
super. Gonna move on. What are you doing at the moment? So let's just move on a bit to how you're kind of keeping yourself busy. What are you up to during this kind of lockdown phase? Because obviously there's not much we can be doing right now. So how are you? What are you doing at the moment to keep
So
yourself fresh?
I'm watching a lot of I'm watching a lot of videos online, watching a lot of kind of doing a lot of research uh, on various techniques, skincare techniques, all of that. Uh, Kind of also like interacting with artists from around the world. As I was telling you earlier, I was part of an art discussion forum with contemporary artists. And this is not just
Yeah.
makeup artists, these are actual artists. So it's nice to keep abreast with what's happening on the art scene as such, because I really enjoy art in its truest
Mm.
form too. So been doing that, watching a lot of movies which I've not had time to watch earlier.
Yeah.
So and I tend to do this, this has been a thing since a long time, where I watch movies of a single director and I watch them chronologically. So,
Wow.
so I watch them chronologically from the time they first started. So you kind of know the progression of thought also. This is something which I learned in college while studying English, where we had to learn the
Okay.
author's works chronologically. So it's very
Yeah.
significant of the time it was written or made, and also to their personal life story. So you kind of understand the director or the writer or the artist in that kind of form, so you understand it much better. You understand what the art is or what the painting is or the movie is about with that kind of perspective.
And which director are you kind of watching at the moment?
Right now, I've been watching some parts of Stanley Kubrick, and there was a recent movie called Dr. Sleep, which is not Stanley Kubrick. It's taken from there and all of that. Uh,
Yeah.
and they've made this film now, which is quite
Wow.
beautiful.
Okay, cool. And then when we come back, anything new you're going to be working on or anything you're excited to be looking at once we end the lockdown phase and we can go back to a bit more life like normal?
I've been kind of working on some things which, to be honest, it'll be difficult for us to get back into mainstream work in terms of fashion, in terms of advertising right away. So that's going to take a little bit of time to pick up. So I'm kind of thinking of doing things like hair accessories, things like that. So kind of working on systems that could work better. So these things could be sold online or it could be sold in stores, and things which are not really available in India. I don't know if you've seen my recent Instagram post where I'd made these wigs. So I
Not yet.
made these really elaborate wigs for a job. And what I'm thinking of doing is something on those lines, but not like as crazy as that, like something a little bit more, subtle versions of that, but which is more bearable as such.
Okay.
Because I think there's a gap in the market for something like this. So why not?
And would that be for commercial use or you think every day, like
Well,
partying kind of stuff?
commercial as well. To be honest, it's more everyday use as such. When one would probably use it for an occasion or something like that. Because,
Okay.
hair accessories, you're not just going to use them for just going to the market as such. You'd use it like for a party or for something a little bit more special than that.
Yeah. All right, good. Any other advice? So I think kind of wrap up question, because you've been around a couple of decades now and really done, really created a name for yourself and worked really hard and passionately. Obviously times are really different now because like you said, when you started, there wasn't much kind of training available, formal training back then, and now there are dime a dozen courses that people go on. and then they very quickly become artists. But what kind of tips and advice would you give to young artists today or aspiring artists about what they need, what kind of program they need to choose, and how they should be careful about how they kind of develop their career?
One thing I would say that there needs to be a lot of dedication to the job, because we have some artists who are doing it because it's like a lot of artists we have who do it to kill time as such. I mean, just because it's like an added kind of thing in their bank, you know. So you have a lot of girls who do that. Like, oh, I mean, I'll just do this because I've got nothing else to do, all of that. But if you're really serious about it, you have to really put yourself into it 100% and really be out there. I mean, like, for example, I need to use this girl's example again, Richa, who started off and she assisted me. She's assisting Anu Kaushik. She's doing shoots on her own, doing a lot of collaborative free shoots also. So, I mean, you really need to be out there and put yourself into it 150% as such. And then you will start seeing results, because the field right now is super competitive. We've got people from all over, and of every, cost bracket as such, because if there's one person who charges, say, 5,000 rupees, there'll be 5 other people charging 1,000 rupees for the same job. So how do you make yourself more special? You know, so updating your skills is very important on a day-to-day basis, because today, with the way advancements are happening, with the way trends keep changing constantly, you need to constantly update yourself. So all of these things are very, very essential. And never to be complacent that, you know, I have arrived, or I am this, or I am that, because that's literally the end of the story.
Good. Super. I think we'll wrap up on that, because that's really good advice for the community. And like I said, it's not a tough industry to get into, and it's not easy to build this career. So I think you're kind of great advice for those looking to get into what from the outside seems like a very sexy, glamorous job, but like you said, requires a lot of hard work and determination to really make it.
Absolutely. Like when I started, I used to work like 48 hours non-stop on certain jobs. So literally 48 hours non-stop, 48 hours non-stop. Like sleep on the bus while we are traveling from one location to the other, things like that. So it can get really, really, really difficult. So, I mean, you have to be really aware of all of these hardships. And it's not everybody's cup of tea, but dedication, you know, and perseverance can get you a long way.
Super. Before I wrap up, what's in your career to date? What's been like the most favorite part, or part of the career, the journey you've had so far? What have you enjoyed the most?
I would say all throughout, I would say it's the transformation process. Like, it's literally like seeing somebody like a My Fair Lady being transformed from nothing to something. And that is the constant motivation that has been throughout, you know, that you see somebody transform, like, oh my God, like she can look like this, and then suddenly she can look completely different and so fabulous. And that's the one thing that kind of gives is the drug of, you know, makeup and hair as such, literally. You know, it's a high that you get, like, you know, when you see that kind of transformation. I'm sure like people like Asha and all of these ones, Manzoor and all of these people who work in salons also, when you see like things getting changed right in front of you, it's quite a kick and it's quite a thrill.
Brilliant. Yeah, and I think a lot of the artists we talk to and stylists, they say the same thing, that whole ability to create something from scratch.
Absolutely.
You know, and really kind of and make someone look beautiful and feel beautiful as well.
Totally. That really works.
Brilliant. Super. Thank you very much, Clint, for your time.
You're welcome, Vikas. It was a pleasure,
buddy.
Same here.
All right. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.